Hey everybody, and welcome to Breaking Biotech. Thank you all for joining me today on this wonderful Sunday night, the last day of the month of March. Hope you all had a great weekend. I definitely did, and I'm glad I can be here with you guys to talk about some exciting stuff that went on in the week in the biotech world. So today we're going to talk about Biogen. We're going to touch on the Sarepta interim data that came out. Gonna get through some of the Viking news and gonna touch a little bit on AMRN because today was a big week for them as well. So yeah, if you want to help me out, please like, subscribe, or leave me a comment, and I would greatly appreciate it. And definitely tell a friend if you know somebody that's interested in the sector or anything like that. So yeah, we'll go from there. So the first thing I want to touch on was Biogen and their co-partner here, Eisai. I think that's how you say it. So we learned a couple weeks ago that Biogen discontinued their two phase 3 aducanumab trials. And aducanumab was an antibody that would reduce the amount of A beta plaques in the brain. And we know that these antibodies, there's been multiple of them, are able to reduce plaque in the brain, but they're not actually able to reduce the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So it's been a problem that these two things don't coincide together, and it's really made a lot of people question the amyloid hypothesis that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. So potentially it's something else other than amyloid plaques that are causing the disease. So the two companies here have been involved in a number of trials, and they're currently involved in a number of Alzheimer's trials. And Biogen's partner company here, Eisai, they were recommended to continue their phase 3 for this elenbecestat or their compound here that is a BACE inhibitor, and BACE is involved in actually the production of amyloid beta plaques. So the theory being, if amyloid is the cause of Alzheimer's disease, reducing the production of amyloid in the brain might potentially help Alzheimer's disease. So Eisai is continuing with this phase 3 trial, and they also just announced that they're going to initiate a phase 3 trial of BAN2401 in early Alzheimer's. So if the amyloid hypothesis is not true, there's a high probability that these two studies are going to fail. And so that's more nails in the coffin for, well, Biogen, but more so Eisai here, which is a Japanese company. So the interesting thing, so in my opinion, all of these trials are going to fail, and this is going to be, another setback for both companies. But Biogen does seem to have distanced themselves a little bit from Eisai. The press releases of both of these things were only on the Eisai website and not on Biogen's website, even though Biogen does list Eisai as a partner for these two compounds. So it's kind of interesting moving forward how it's going to play out. And Biogen does need to figure out where they're going to go from here. They still have a lot of cash. I put their net cash here, just the net assets, the net current assets minus the net current liabilities, just to get an idea. And they still have tons of cash. And Eisai does have some cash here, but if we expect that a phase 3 Alzheimer's trial might cost in the area of like $1 billion, 2 or 3 of these can quickly add up and reduce the amount of capital they have towards acquiring other assets and getting into another area. So it's something to watch. I'm definitely not buying Biogen at these levels. Definitely not buying Eisai. So they're over the counter traded. So I don't have an opportunity to short them, but I think they would be a great short as we get closer to the end of the trial, at least the phase 3 here in the BACE inhibitor and as well as BAN2401. So yeah, I thought I would touch on this, and this article by John Carroll was great, and you guys should all read it if you want more info on that. But yeah, so interesting stuff. I hope Biogen can pivot and can figure out some sort of area so they can stick around. But Alzheimer's just continues to be tough. Okay, let's talk about Sarepta. So Sarepta announced some interim data that came out on their Essence trial, which is a trial for casimersen as well as golodirsen, and it's a phase 3 with these two exon skipping technologies to help with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So the tech itself, just generally, it's a PMO type compound that binds to an exon and allows the translation of the mRNA so that you can get some sort of functional protein where otherwise you would have no protein at all. So it's better than nothing. And these patients actually, at least with eteplirsen, are able to get much better quality of life. So it's an interesting idea, and it has worked in the past, even though there's some controversy over the approval of that drug. So they're doing this phase 3, and they look at two different things basically, which is the amount of protein that's expressed and the functional outcomes from it. So what was announced in their press release for their casimersen is they got dystrophin protein, which is the protein that you would expect would be expressed if it was working. And the way they account this is percent of normal dystrophin as measured by Western blot. And Western blot, you do a protein lysate, run it on a gel, transfer that protein to a membrane, and then incubate it with an antibody against whatever your protein of interest is. And in this case, it would be dystrophin. So, and how they measure this is through densitometry technique. So you're really just measuring pixels on this membrane, and you can quantify that. But given there's so many variables involved, like the amount of loading protein, and it's all relative. So the way they're quantifying it here is it's relative to the normal amount of expression you would get in a healthy individual. And so they measured this at baseline, and then they measured it after their treatment. And so the kids at baseline have 0.9% percent of normal expression of dystrophin, and then after the treatment, this increased to 1.736% of normal. So 100% would be normal expression, like me or you, if you don't have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So there's still very, very low amount of protein here, but for a functional outcome, we might not need 100% of dystrophin expression in order to be functional, or at least get most of our function back. So this is very reminiscent of the Sangamo story that we had with the MPS 2, I guess even 1. It's the same kind of story, where you don't need a lot of enzyme necessarily to get functional improvements in the condition. And it's a similar thing here, because for the other treatment, eteplirsen, we got very variable increases in expression of dystrophin, and then the drug was approved, and it's doing pretty well as far as I know. So if we look here, they also say they got positive RT-PCR for exon skipping mRNA in all patients, so they're saying it's effective in all patients, but we're only seeing this twofold increase in the expression of the gene. So is this enough to actually get a functional improvement in muscle? So they say in the press release that they're going to try to submit casimersen NDA in the middle of 2019. So they're going to have a meeting with the FDA before submitting that. And there we can see what the opinion is. I personally think without functional data, it's hard to just go ahead and approve this, even though you know that your previous treatments that are basically the same, just a different exon, even though you know that works, it's still, without seeing functional data here, it's tough for me to get behind this entirely. It's good that they're seeing an increase in protein expression, but without the functional data, it's tough to say that, it's tough to approve a treatment and say, hey, patients take this and you're going to do well, when really it could be insignificant. So, I'm still long on Sarepta. I do have a decent position in them, and I think long term they're a great company. So right now this could be a buy, and they might be able to show functional data in these patients, so it might just be a minor setback. So this doesn't deter me at all from holding on to my position, but I'm being careful, because if they are going to have to delay this, it could cut into their revenue stream, so we could see some downside further in Sarepta, but I would really just use it as a buying opportunity. So I looked also to compare it to the other treatments that they have, eteplirsen and golodirsen. And this article, if you want to look at more details on the eteplirsen trials, because it's interesting how this all came about. And basically, eteplirsen, they weren't able to get a reliable baseline reading, and the expression was only ended up being about 1% of normal dystrophin levels. So also very, very low. and it was still able to get FDA approval. Golodirsen, on the other hand, at 48 weeks, they saw 1% expression after treatment, compared to 0.1% expression at baseline. So that's a huge increase in the amount of dystrophin in these patients. So I could see the FDA being much more willing to approve this, and I think I'd have to look again to see what's going on, because I know that they're doing this Essence trial. It does involve Golodirsen as well. So, but Golodirsen I would be less concerned with, given the huge increase in expression here. But again, this 0.1% at baseline, how reliable is that? How variable is that? So it's a little bit tough here, and it's going to be up to the discretion of the FDA, really, even though it's up to Sarepta to really argue that this it's still 100% more protein expression. So that could be enough to lead to some functional improvements. It's going to be up to Sarepta to show that. And I think it would be good that they did, but it's all up to the FDA. So we'll see from there. But it's good to see that they are getting increases in protein, and hopefully that translates to functional improvements. But I'm still long on Sarepta. This data doesn't worry me long term for the company. All right, let's keep going. So Viking Therapeutics. Viking is involved in the NASH space. I should really not say that until they actually start a NASH trial. They did a trial in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it reminds people that it could work in something like NASH, and that's what everybody's expecting, because the NASH market is so big. So they've been hammered. Viking is like one of the highest short float companies that are under like a $5 billion market cap. And, they were dancing around like $7 for a bit, and around $8. And then Friday they closed, they were up above 10, and then they closed just below 10. After they got an upgrade from Pasha Saraf's upgrade to $21 a share, and he works at Leerink, and it was based on this abstract that came out for their presentation at EASL. And really the data that we get at EASL, it's not really, I was kind of surprised that this is what led to Pasha Saraf's upgrade, because the amount of, okay, let me be careful how I phrase this, but basically they did a 5 milligram dose and a 10 milligram dose in patients at different dosing intervals, and they got drastic improvements in fatty liver based on this MRI technique, and they saw basically no severe adverse events. So for me, whether it's 10 milligrams or 5 milligrams, I don't know why this is what really broke his back in actually making this call and upgrading it. Somebody can let me know if I'm missing something here, but what I'm seeing on Twitter and everywhere else is that because the 5 milligram dose is just as good as the 10 milligram dose, this means that they're going to have substantially less side effects with the drug. But as far as I know, there's not really many side effects associated with the drug, other than reducing cholesterol and improving diabetes as well. So I don't know, but it's good that the market is finally realizing the value behind Viking, because their market cap is still very low comparatively to, say, Madrigal, which is further ahead in their NASH approval. They've just started their phase 3 in NASH, and their market cap's just under $2 billion. Viking's going to do a biopsy-confirmed NASH trial starting it in the second half of this year, and their market cap's much lower. So, I think Viking is still undervalued where it is right now. I haven't sold any of my shares, and I think my average is just over 10, because I bought multiple rounds after their phase 2A trial data came out. So my average was pretty high, but once we got low around 7 and 8, I started loading a lot more up there. So for comparison, Intercept is valued at 3.32 billion right now, and they're the ones that just came out with the phase 3 data for their NASH drug, Ocaliva, and it's got its own set of issues, and that's pretty much why I think Madrigal is valued as high as it is. But Intercept is likely to be the first approved NASH drug if the FDA doesn't see any issues, but we're going to see more data at EASL from Intercept. And I do think that Madrigal and Viking are going to be pretty much the best in class for NASH when they eventually show good data in phase 3 or phase 2B in the case of Viking. So something else that happened this week was GenFit was launched their IPO on the NASDAQ. They're a French company and they were traded publicly there, but they have a PPAR, I think it's alpha delta agonist in NASH, and they're in phase 3 too. So we're going to expect some data later in the year for them as well. So there's somebody to keep an eye on. But I didn't take a look at their material recently, but their drug didn't seem super interesting to me, and I don't exactly remember why. I'll look into it more the closer we get to Q4, but they weren't really on my radar to begin with. But they are going to announce some data at the end of the year, so we'll see. Okay, jumbled through that, but the EASL stuff that we should look forward to, personally, I'm really interested in the Intercept abstract. It's under embargo until April 11th, but we're going to see some interesting safety data there, I think, and it will be a mover for the stock. Canadas is going to present, GenFit's going to present for PBC. Viking, of course, their abstract is public, but we're going to see their posters, so they might have some figures. Sirius Therapeutics, never heard of this company. Their abstract's under embargo. It might be worth looking at. Where are we today? Yeah, so a couple weeks. I might take a look and see if there's anything interesting there, but they're in phase 2B for NASH. So if it's interesting, this stock could definitely be competitive with Viking and Madrigal, but I know absolutely nothing about them, so I would do my own research personally. And then we have Merck with their collaborator here doing showing a phase 1, but this abstract is public too, so you can look at that. So this is just for information on what's going to come out in the next couple weeks with NASH, so it's pretty cool. Okay, so moving on, last company I want to talk about today is AMRN. So AMRN had a big week again, and I said that this podcast isn't going to be just an AMRN podcast, but they keep having good stuff coming out and positive stuff, so I got to talk about it. So I told you guys that I sold an 1850 put like a week ago, and the stock went below 17 for a while. So, I was sweating a little bit, even though I knew that long term it was probably going to work out, even if I did get assigned the shares. So I wasn't super worried. And we ended up finishing, I think, just under 21 on Friday after all this crazy good news came out. So the first piece of news was that the American Diabetes Association recommended that Vascepa for diabetes and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease was a good idea for patients that were on statins with high triglyceride levels. So, people who follow the ADA, there's a lot of clinicians there. So this is really free marketing for AMRN and Vascepa. And it's just going to get the word out there and get doctors on board with prescribing Vascepa. And, we should see some off-label prescription coming up as we get through it. As we get to the actual approval date. But, after the ADA does their recommendation, EASD, which is the European Association for the Study of Diabetes, could follow, as well as the Canadian Diabetes Association. So this is really just huge, like very, very positive marketing for AMRN and Vascepa, and shows that they're standing behind them, even though there's this potential controversy with some of the data that I think is really just a joke at this point. So the other thing that we found out is that Health Canada is offering priority review for Vascepa, and it really just cuts down on the number of days they're going to take to look at it. So 215 versus 355. Canada's not like a giant market. They're like 1/10 the size of the US, so I wouldn't look at this as like, we're not going to see a significant contribution to the scripts from Canada compared to Europe or the US, but it's nice that they're standing behind it as well, and also making it clear that this is important for patients. So it's good. It will contribute. And I think it's also just good marketing that shows that these agencies do see the value in Vascepa. So something else that came out too, and I don't really know the history of this decision, but the EMA, the European Medicines Agency in Europe, confirmed that omega-3 fatty acid medicines are not effective at like, I think it was 1 gram per day, and I think it was the combination. So you can't just put a bunch of omega-3 fatty acids together and take that and hope to get any improvement in heart problems after a heart attack. So this is kind of like solidifying Vasipa as the king of them all, pretty much. And I don't know why they looked into this, if it was some sort of inquiry or something like that, but it was interesting to read, to go through what they were talking about with it. So this is again another like boost to AMRN and Vasipa as being the leader amongst all the other omega-3 products that exist. And then the last thing is that the total year-over-year prescriptions are hit 40,000 per week. So this is also pretty huge. And maybe I have a mistake here. I just noticed this, that it is year-over-year. And I thought that this was year-over-year total. Okay, so, take this with a grain of salt. If it's total prescriptions, though, 40,000 per week is not really going to hit their 2.69 million for their revenue estimate of 350 million for the year for 2019. But I'll have to look into that and double check, because now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm a little bit cautious. But we want them to hit above around 50,000 prescriptions per week in order for them to hit that $350 million revenue, which is what they estimated. So we'll see. And the revenue continues to increase if the prescriptions continue to increase. And you can see this here in the new prescriptions year over year. And if this does continue to increase, we'll be well above 50,000 per week as we get through Q2 and Q3. And that's going to, increase the revenue, and it might even go over the 350 million that they predicted. So we'll see, but huge week for AMRN. I don't think it's going to go, the stock is volatile. There's no question about that. And there was really a sell the news event last week that occurred. So, we could still see some volatility, but I feel comfortable holding AMRN for quite a while. And at least until we start to see some of the revenue in 2020. But I think all of this good news is going to continue to roll through, and AMRN is going to be a great buy. So, that's what I got. So for this week, the AACR is going on. So, look out for a lot of cancer updates in the field. So I'm going to keep an eye out on that. I'm trying to get more comfortable with cancer studies and the drugs that are involved. So I'm going to keep an eye out on some of those interesting studies. In terms of politics, we got the Mueller report finally. So I think the trade battle with China, maybe the U.S. will win and China will back down now that they know that Trump isn't going to get ousted from office. And, I don't really want to talk politics on this podcast, but as far as I'm concerned, the report that we got secures Trump's position at least until the election. So with that, we got some headlines about China being willing to negotiate in terms of IP, I think it was. So we could see some resolution of the trade battle, which would, bring in a lot of money into the equities. This week, we're going to see retail sales, non-farm payrolls, as well as the unemployment rate. And I go to investing.com for a lot of this stuff, and I think it's a great resource. So if you guys are interested in like branching out into that kind of thing, definitely use investing.com because I think they're great and they work really well with that. I'm not paid by them, but I do subscribe to their thing, and I think it's been pretty useful for me. So other than that, when I get free time, I'm going to start looking at some companies, and I've talked about CRISPR and Allergan before, and Marker Therapeutics is another one that I want to take a look at when I get some free time. I think they might have some interesting stuff, and it was recommended to me by a listener. So yeah, so with that, I'm going to show my portfolio. So the moves I made this week, I don't know if I tweeted about this, but Catalyst Bio was under 8 this week at some point, so I bought 50 of them and lowered my cost basis. Other than that, though, I didn't do really much. So, and this doesn't take into account the put I sold on AMRN, but it's pretty out of the money, so I'm probably gonna, I might close it out when we get close to like 80%, which is it's like $150. So it's I'll just add it to my cash position once I sell, or unless I got to sign the shares. But I'm looking to I'm going to increase the cash because that's a safest bet. I don't want to have to deal with anything else. So yeah, I guess really my worst holding right now is Amune. They saw positive data from their phase three, their latest phase three, but the stock is still a bit lower than what I bought it at. But I still like them long term. Aspirion continues to stick around 40. I think they're undervalued here, and I might add. Yeah. So other than that, yeah, we're almost in line with the S&P 500. I think I'm at 11% for the year, and Q1's done, so 11% for Q1. So we'll see how Q2 works out. Volatility was down this week quite a bit, so you know we'll see what it brings us this week. But I'm gonna wrap it up there, guys. So thank you all so much for listening, and please like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and yeah, we'll see you next time.